Hi, welcome to the RAMcast, where we talk about all things related to Sioux Valley. This is your host, Brian Kirby, and co host, Jimmy Sickler.
Happy to be here, Mr. Kirby. Thank you for having me.
Yes, this year we're going to do another special edition. This time where it's teachers, and we have none other than Mr. Mickey Kenny today.
Hello, everybody.
All right, without further ado, let's get the show rolling. All right, hello. Tell us the name, Mr. Kenny, of your high school, where it was at, and your mascot.
It was Service High School, Anchorage, Alaska, and we were the Cougars.
Oh, it's the Hillside Boys.
Yeah.
Nice. What song, band, TV show, movie, or hobby have you been listening to or watching for fun? What are you doing for fun?
Can't be your own band.
Yeah. I can't plug my band here. Dang. Yeah, I do like to. I'd say every night, tend to watch a movie or documentary or show of some sort. So I'll just go off the top of my head. Right now, I've been into The Penguin.
Yes.
It's dark. It's got. I don't even know much about Batman, but luckily, it doesn't seem like you need to know much about Batman to enjoy the show. So yeah, that's been my favorite show. Other than that, I usually walk my dogs and listen to podcasts. And for podcasts, anything that's kind of comedy and history brought together tends to be what I go for podcasts.
Any recommendations for that?
Yeah, right now it's The Dollop and Last Podcast on the Left, but they do more kind of like true crime and cult. But they lots of comedy and history and woven into it.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool. I wrote down The Penguin, by the way.
Good.
So
It's a good one.
Love it.
all right. Which teacher had the most impact on you, and what do you remember about them?
Yeah. I'm going to go for high school teacher. Just knowing our audience of high schoolers and middle schoolers out there. So at Service High, I will admit the first probably freshman, sophomore year, I was not doing great academically. Wasn't failing classes, but I was averaging C's and didn't put much more expectation on myself. And I think it was my junior year, I took AP psychology with Phil Jordan. And his whole demeanor, he was kind of like this very meditative, kind of Zen philosopher. And taking that class and just having outside of like math, history, science, and just having to be psychology, I'd never kind of been taught these things about like how people think. And I just became obsessed. And then luckily, that transferred to my other classes, and I started to find more value in what I was learning. But yeah, he was great, and then he also happened to be a high school basketball coach. Didn't know that beforehand, but it kind of works out.
What was your favorite extracurricular activity and why?
So it's a toss up between cross country running and soccer. I think I'm going to have to go with cross country running. Soccer afforded me like all the friendships and like close social things that I had, but running, there's something about running because it was like the first time I'd been forced into like an individual sport. Whereas before, like all the accomplishments are, kind of spread out across the team.
Right.
So for like basketball, hockey, soccer, running was the first time where it was like it all lies on like how you as an individual perform. And I just got, again, obsessed with it, trained over the summer. And just like that whole experience of finding joy in what otherwise seems like a very monotonous and horrible thing to do, like running around. And there may have been a little bit of pride, like if you do good at something, you end up wanting to do it more. But yeah, so that started my freshman year, and I carried that through all my 4 years, and that was kind of my main sport at the end of high school, and that may be why it brought me the most joy. But also, like, it's been a lifelong, like, I still love running, so I'd have to go with that one over soccer.
A lot of good reasons there, for sure. So what does Mr. Kenny do for fun outside of Sioux Valley?
Yeah. I'd say it's like on the daily. As lame as this may sound, like walking my dogs with the podcast is like my peak fun thing. Um, but outside of the daily and looking at like the larger bird's eye view, um, as many of the students here know, I'm also in a band, and we get together a couple times over the winter, but mainly in the summer is when we go on tour. And that's just 24/7, being with each other, going to these amazing towns. And most importantly, like, I guess to answer this question, when I'm involved with like my art or like my, at least my artistic side is when I find a lot of joy and excitement. And being with them, like we've been, kind of a family almost for about 15 years.
Wow.
So yeah, having that kind of vehicle and relationship of bringing our art together and then bringing it to others, that brings me the most kind of happiness outside of teaching. Teaching
Yeah.
brings me,
Understand. Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So, when you were in school, what class did you find the most enjoyable?
Since I went high school last time with Phil Jordan, AP Psychology is what changed me there. I'll answer this one for college. Philosophy. I didn't know anything about philosophy going to college,
Mhm.
and luckily it was a requirement for some reason. I don't know if it still is. But yes, that put me on track. I was a philosophy major, and just the idea of meeting together, reading like crazy complicated texts, and then having a professor who needed to like translate it down because I was not at that level, but I could like
Yeah.
glimpse like this is some pretty deep stuff, and having someone translate it for me. Um, I'd say that kind of most changed me and brought me joy just with like how I viewed life, and kind of made me pause a little bit more and think a little bit deeper than I had previously before that.
Cool. So, as a student, who do you think you had the most meaningful relationship with?
You mean when I was a student?
Yeah, when you were a student. Yep.
I'd say definitely my friends. I didn't have siblings,
Okay.
and that was kind of rare. I think most people have siblings, and yeah, I kind of lived away. I was kind of a hillside in the woods kid. Um, so for me, like friendships, and oftentimes they were with my, people I was on teams with. I
Mm.
played every sport I could, and that may have been a reason why. Was It was a good way to like, get default friends. Gotta
Yep.
go out and put yourself out there. It's just like they're on the team, they're your friend. Figure it out. Um, yeah, I'd say more so than most. I kind of leaned into my friendships.
Good. Since you become a teacher, what's something you've learned about when you're working with kids? Or learned about
Um,
yourself, I'm sorry. What's something you've learned about yourself?
yeah. I want to say like patience. I feel like I've always been kind of patient even before working with kids. Like I never run hot or cool. I'm pretty even keel most of the
Mhm.
time. Um, but yeah, working with students, what I've learned more about myself, I would say I now know 100% for sure I make too many dad jokes. I rely on puns way more than anyone should. I've learned I
Yes.
don't have good fashion. Since now I'm going to continue. I can bring up the things they have noticed about me, and now I notice about myself.
I don't know. My kid likes your shoes, so
I got the newest Crocs. I'm hoping kids think they're cool in a couple years, and I can look back and say I was ahead of the curve on that one.
yeah.
Yes.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your younger self entering service high school for the first time or leaving to head off to your post secondary training?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm gonna do leaving. Um, if I could go back, yeah, I think I'll answer it this way. So my senior in high school, I was really obsessed with running. Got a scholarship. Wasn't good enough to get a scholarship out of state, but I got one for UAA.
Nice.
Um, and this is not going to be anything against UAA. Like, love my time there. It was a good experience. But all my other friends, went. Did traveling, trade. Most of them went to college and other places. And I kind of wish I wouldn't have solely been looking at it on the financial side. It's like the reason I went to UAA was I got a scholarship. But in retrospect, it was just like in-state tuition.
Mm.
I don't know if that figure amount should have been the determining factor in like what I do my first year in college. Um, so yeah, I guess if I'm looking back at myself and thinking, could this be advice for others? Like money is a thing, yeah, but experiences sometimes are bigger than money, and to kind of take that into consideration, leaving high school and going into the next level.
I always try to get kids from Alaska to go out of state just for that experience piece of
Right.
it.
Yep.
So
Yep. Good answer. Good advice. What's one of the most memorable moments you've had with your students?
Is here at Sioux Valley or just students in general?
Can be
I'd
in
say in
general.
general.
Okay. Um, so definitely my first year teaching, I went out to a village. I didn't have a teaching certificate, never studied. I wasn't in any education classes in college, but I knew I wanted to live in a village, and they were luckily desperate for teachers, and they allowed me to come in. But what was really unique about that experience is the year before they had won a huge grant for 4 years. That was the idea behind it, was we want to bring cultural experts in dog mushing
Mm.
into the school. So I showed up in this village, and one of the classes I had to teach was dog mushing, which meant I had to bring classes to the mushers. And it was even better than that. It wasn't just like mushing, it was also like, here's how we're going to carve up this moose, we're going to make dried duck. Um, so for me, as kind of an outsider, I just got brought into this situation where, I guess, quote unquote, I was the teacher, but really I was kind of the middleman, and I was able to like become a student. And I think
Yes.
the students saw that as well, and they saw me like right next to them asking questions, and I think that just created a really good environment for that whole year with those kids. But yeah, I felt entirely grateful that I could go out and learn. But one specific was we did this ice fishing thing on the Koyukuk. It's like -30, and they just made birch poles, and we did the whole thing. And just one of those, like, I have a picture of it, and it was like so cold, the sunlight, it's just like beams. Um, that day always sticks out as like how fortunate I was to be out there with them doing that type of activity.
Yeah, it brings me back thinking about my first days out in the village as well. So definitely cold. That sun looks awesome when it's 40, 50
Yeah,
below.
yeah, and it's probably also so special. You see the sun; it's a big
Yeah,
deal just in itself.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right. What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you in front of students?
Ooh,
It could also be their classroom, anywhere, or on a trip or something.
mm, let me think. I'm going to go a different direction. This is because I think we'd want this to be like a funny, but nothing funny comes to mind. So I'm going to go to like a more serious, just because it still answers the question. Uh, but in context, I wish I had a funny one that I can think of,
Hey,
but
that's
I
fair.
can't. But yeah, I'll say this. It's like some students know, but last year, like when I started working here, like I have alopecia, new to me. And if students don't know, alopecia is like you just lose either patches of your hair or all of your hair. And so I was teaching in Juneau before I transferred here. Started the year, all the hair. I've had a beard, last 20 years of my life. Love the beard, miss it. And within 3 months, I lost all hair. And
Mm.
that was a crazy experience to go through, especially with like students, because like you're kind of on presentation mode. You can't
Yeah.
hide any day.
Right.
And they were sixth graders, and so they're at that perfect level of, we notice differences, but we don't have a filter, so we're just
Yep.
gonna like shout those observations. Um, and then, yeah, and they also like, if you're a teacher and you're stern for a moment, they may want to like have a reaction, and they can kind of twist barbs in you pretty well. And yeah, one day I was doing a Kahoot with the students, and they can kind of create their own names. And one of the students, he was a hockey player, so like I had a good connection with him, but he was also like the very difficult kid in class. And I'd said something like, "You didn't turn your assignment in, can't play Kahoot." And then I look at the screen, and at that point I just like lost my like eyebrows. And I was doing pretty well, like my pride was still okay. And he did a screen name, and he said like, his name was At Least I Have an Eyebrow. Like,
Oh my
it was
god.
this
Oh, gee.
moment where, like, and I appreciate the laughter because that was like, I saw it and I looked at him and it was this moment of like, man, this could either like really get me or I could recognize like how kind of hilarious the moment is. It's like sixth grader, he knows he's doing it, and I can look at him and he's almost got a smile. It's like, okay, like we're still good. But it was like this embarrassing moment in the sense of like, I need to figure out who I am as a teacher and a human and a person going through this. The kids are around me. It's all like there's no map to like
Mhm.
how to do this correctly. And
Right.
overall, the kids were like extraordinarily like careful. Like they were so nice to me going through that and like very helpful and supportive. But it is also good to like admit like there are moments when they used it against me, but then I talked with him and it all turned out fine. But it was a moment where as a teacher you feel, oh, they see like this human side of me and it's vulnerable. Like here's the vulnerability, it's on
Mhm.
display, and sometimes they take advantage of it, but usually not.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good. That's a good story.
It was a long one.
That was a
Sorry
good one.
about
No,
I
that
wish I
was
had
a good one.
a funny moment, but I didn't.
No, that's good. Okay, so what is your plan after our final workday on May 23rd this year?
So, putting myself into May. Uh, First thing I'm gonna do is try and get into the mountains in some way. That's one thing that's been, I won't say hard, but I just have not been doing a good job with
Mm.
myself on getting myself out into the mountains. That's the main thing I desire. Maybe Denali Highway, just camping, hiking, things like that. And then, yeah, what I brought up earlier, what I look forward to the most each summer is the band coming to Alaska.
Yeah.
So they'll be here shortly after, and that chaos will begin, and we'll kind of follow our art around the state as best we can.
Awesome. So that's kind of all our questions. So one last question we've asked is there anything else you want to add?
No, I
Okay.
guess I just hope a lot of students listen to this. I think as teachers, like it's nice for us to think and know that students see us like outside of the classroom a little bit more, and
Yeah.
I think that's helpful. I remember that as a student for me, right? Like, oh,
Yep.
the what I was going to say about Phil Jordan
Oh, yeah.
earlier, the teacher that kind of changed my high school. So my description of him is he was really like Zen, Buddhist, like deep thinker. But then I went and watched him coach. And I don't know, Jimmy, if you've ever coached against him, but I went and saw him coach a basketball game. And here is this like Zen teacher. But then I saw him in his passion in
Mm.
that game I went to. He threw a chair, got ejected.
Yes.
It's like it was good to see that side. And I was like, oh yeah, teachers, like what you see is not the complete whole character every time.
Yes.
Jimmy's been known to throw a chair too.
That's not true.
All right. Well, that's going to conclude our special edition here with this teacher spotlight. This is Mr. Kirby, principal here at Sioux Valley. I want to thank my co-host Jimmy,
Thank you.
and also I want to thank our special guest, Mr. Kenny, for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this as another way to connect with our Sioux Valley community, and I hope to see you at our next school event or around the community. Thank you for listening.